have people start by going to where the documents that the standards themselves are based on. It's really start to dive into the framework for K-12 science education to look at that. I'd particularly point them to looking at the parts around the 3 dimensions and really digging into that area. The most important thing for teachers as they get involved at the beginning is to really start to focus on the practices for science. The science and engineering practices are really a key aspect and something new in the standards. And the great thing about working on the practices is that it's something that they can start to learn and start to immediately incorporate into their own teaching without even worrying about any sort of formal changes in curriculum. What we're really focused on here is, deep understanding of the core ideas and the cross-cutting concepts and the really ability to engage in the practices. And the fantastic thing about the integration of these 3 dimensions is that when students are engaged in the practices, they really have an opportunity to show what they know and what they're able to do. So throughout the day, when students are doing things, teachers can really focus on looking at what students are doing and having a better understanding with it. And the shift to a more sort of student-centered classroom really gives teachers a chance to see what students are thinking by what they are doing in the classroom, rather than just students there listening to the teacher in a sort of very blank, receptive mode. Well, science is all about phenomena. Science is this process of understanding phenomena in the world around us, trying to explain the phenomena or predict the phenomena. And so we want students to engage in that same approach, that we want them to learn in ways that are analogous to the way that scientists have learned. And so phenomena play a really powerful point here. The other thing about phenomena is that they can really lead to students really wondering about things. And so they become tremendously powerful in motivating students to engage in learning. They can really be the driver of the entirety of learning. What we want is ultimately the shift from, instead of students just passively getting science ideas from their teacher, is that students are figuring out phenomena in the world around them. One of the initial pieces of this is this idea that students are going to be figuring out things on their own. And so in some ways, they may walk into a classroom and they may see that the teacher isn't doing what they traditionally think of as teaching. I've heard situations where teachers say, "Oh, I'll come back on another day when you're teaching," because the students are all engaged in doing things. And that really misses the boat of what the real art of this sort of a teaching approach is to get students to do this, to be able to facilitate students so that they are coming up with the ideas rather than just, again, passively receiving those ideas. So that's one big shift that I think to work. The other big thing I would point on to administrators is to be willing to give their teachers the freedom to try things and fail. In 3-dimensional teaching and learning, it's really important that we let students think about stuff and learn that failure is totally allowed. In science, failure is frequently a part of it. You try things and it doesn't work, so you try something else. It's just as we need teachers to set a culture in their classrooms where students can feel comfortable trying things and it not always working out right, we need administrators to be giving their teachers the freedom and creating a culture that teachers can try things out and have them not work, and that's going to be okay. The first thing I would point to is there are a lot of great tools out there that can be supportive to developing discourse. You can find things on the NST website that support discourse. There are the Talk Moves piece. There's some great things from the STEM Teaching Tools website that all foster. The second point I would make is how important it is to, at the beginning of the year, to really work on that culture of discourse, that we are comfortable with each other, that we're going to interact with each other on the value of our ideas and how they relate to the evidence, as opposed to how much, who's the most popular kid in the classroom or who likes who and all of that sort of function. And to get into that mode, having teachers learn a few tricks and those tools that I mentioned before help. Instead of immediately affirming or correcting students, to really get students to draw out and give what their ideas are and make them go through the process. This ultimately also is where phenomena plays a huge role, because it can be a much more powerful approach to have, to have students correct their ideas by giving them a new phenomena to look at.